So today we are connecting with Sheelene Gumbs, and I got the pronunciation correct before, but our lovely guest says that most people get it wrong, even though this is phonetically correct. So I'll just say Sheelene from now on. Sheelene Gumbs, who has roots here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and is currently residing in St. Croix. Sheelene has over 28 years of experience as a crisis counselor at the Women's Coalition of St. Croix, and she joins us to share with us details on how she helps her clients to manage stressful circumstances. She's a motivational speaker, life coach, and personal empowerment. Welcome to the show,
Welcome.
Sheelene.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. How are you doing?
We are great. What about you?
I'm great, actually. I'm great. It's a busy month, but busy is always good because positive stress is good stress.
Okay.
Now you tell me. Thank you for that.
we learn something new every day.
I'm loving the background.
Yes.
It's calming. It's definitely calming. So I can see why you chose
Very
it.
much.
So,
Very much so.
What can you tell us about the Women's Coalition of St. Croix and the way that it caters to its audience or clientele?
Well, this is not a stress-free place. It's a crisis center. But we are a victim advocacy program. We've been here for 41 years. Well, 41 years this year. And what we do is all victims of crime advocates, primarily domestic violence and sexual assault. We are their crisis intervention center. They come here for counseling. They come here for resources. If they need to get away, if they need advocacy in court, if they need medical advocacy, if they need housing, if they need to relocate, we do counseling for children. As well, but we do victims of crime, male, female, children. Most people don't look at men as victims. Men are victims. Men are victims. And so we do counseling for them as well, kind of help them to get back on path after going through very, very traumatic experiences. Because one of the things that creates a problem that leads to stress, which is why de-stressing is very important, is that when we have traumatic events that happen, especially in the home, it has very long-lasting effects. We start making decisions based on scare tactics that were used towards us when we were 5 and 6. And as adults, we get emotionally stagnated when it comes to how we make those decisions. And that's what produces a lot of our negative stress. Positive stress means we have something exciting that's coming up and we want to do that, and our adrenaline starts to work, but we don't really focus on positive stress work. That is one of the things that I do. Because getting to know yourself and understanding yourself is one of the greatest ways to de-stress.
That's such important work, Sheelene. We'll talk about that more in detail later.
Okay.
So Sheelene, you said the center has been in operation for 41 years. How many of those years have you been a part of the center? And
Nearly 30.
Oh, wow. That is
Yeah,
great.
on and off, back and forth. Yeah.
And can you expound on your role as a crisis counselor?
I guess it's exactly as the name says. I'm the crisis counselor. So you don't need an appointment to come talk to me. Something happens, you call me, and I help you kind of figure out what's going to happen. If it involves you having to call the police or having to go to court or having to move or having to relocate, I'm the go-to person for that in the office. We have a child therapist that deals primarily with children. We have bilingual counselors that deal with that. We have a court advocate. We have a shelter. We have transitional housing. But my primary role is when your head's not spinning correctly for you and you don't know what to do, I'm the let's make this work person.
All right, so let's talk about that, because for you to be involved in this for just about 3 decades suggests to me that not only is this work important, but it's also important to you. So let's talk about what you get to take away from contributing to society in this way.
What I get is a better society. And I live in my community. And in order for me to do my part in ensuring that my community is happy and healthy, emotionally healthy, mainly this is what I do. I feel that it's my passion as well, because I like to see people do well. Really, I like to see people do well. I like to see people who forgot that they can be great, become great, just by a little bit of encouragement. Our culture across the Caribbean tends to speak negative, which is why most people associate stress with the negative stress and not the positive stress. We tend to look at things from a negative perspective. We never see the good and we forget that. Praise is not a big thing. that we do, especially from the older generations. We're learning as we're coming into the new generations that telling somebody that they did well is a good thing. Helping people to realize that there are people that can be non-judgmental. So regardless of what the situation is, giving them information about why they may have made the decisions that they made, because sometimes we make decisions and don't realize that we make decisions based on information processed and not information known, right? And it's not the same thing, by the way. A lot of times we have a lot of information, but we can't apply any of it because it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't connect. And we make a decision based on what at the point is immediately processed information for the desired need. And so you will find people, and like I said, we do a lot of domestic violence. In a domestic violence situation, and they keep going back. And it's because everybody's like, well, why don't they just leave? I mean, this person's hit them. They call them out of their name. They beat the children. They lock them up in the house. They don't give them any money. Why don't they just leave? They can't see the good that they don't know. So it's easier to live in the evil that they do. And so my role as a counselor is to help them to see that there is the good in the things that they don't know. And they've lost themselves in the process, which is why accepting abuse becomes easier to do. And so we help them to find themselves and build their self-esteem and self-confidence, which also isn't the same thing, and realize the difference in that and see how we can get them back to being their best selves.
One of the things that I could appreciate from what you just said, Sheelene, is that it's important not to be judgmental because, you know, it's very easy to judge things when you are outside of the situation, but you don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. And I'm glad that with you and your work, you get to know what's going on behind closed doors so you can help the people make better decisions, better informed decisions. And I could also appreciate the resources that you provide to enable them to do that. Because if you are in an abusive relationship and you have no income per se of your own, or you have no shelter of your own, this is why the work that you do is so important, so rewarding. So thank you for that.
No problem. I think that everybody actually has a role in it, but we don't all take the role because we are our brothers and sisters keeper. If we're going to be a village and we're going to be a community, we do need to look out for each other. And sometimes it seems like we've lost the capability of doing that. It's always an us and them. And that's one of the stigmas that I'm really trying to work really, really hard to break. It's in my mentorship program, which is not connected to the coalition. I try to do that. I have tried to have the generation gap bridge. So I have mentors in 18 to 35, and they mentor somebody older so that they can get older wisdom, and somebody younger so that we can bridge the gap for the future, because the mindsets are different depending on the generation that you're in. And that in itself helps to understand who you are. And if we understand who we are and how we are, though individual connected, it helps to build that sense of community. And it gives us an opportunity to be able to breathe, because fear is what breeds negative stress. The view in the background, which is why it's there, is the way that I keep my calm. The ocean and water does a lot for me while I'm on land. My favorite place to be is in the air. If I'm in a plane looking out at the skies, I'm at my best, mainly because there's nothing for me to do. And it's the one time that there's no responsibility and there's a calm. And there's no thinking, there's no processing, there's no nothing. So that's my ultimate place. But while I'm still on earth and on land, the ocean, and the music. And I have a very eclectic playlist, because different countries have different sounds, and those sounds relate to me because we're water. And so the vibrations work very, very well for me.
Yeah, I love that you say that, because honestly, the work that you do is so involved. I can imagine at times that it would be difficult to, turn off the clock, because you think maybe if you give it a little more effort, you might be able to make a difference, but it's important to take care of yourself as well. So I could appreciate that indeed. So let's talk about the work and the way that you help your clients navigate stressful situations. And in particular, something that you said before, in the previous segment, struck me. When we talk about domestic violence situations, when we talk about violence, children are sometimes involved in this, not just the men, but the children. And I can see a system where perhaps we might have generational patterns evolving if children see that and they think that it becomes acceptable. At the stage when victims reach out to you and the children need counseling, generally, what can you tell us about what's involved in that?
First of all, children are always involved, and we don't realize that. We tend to have this belief, which is a general belief, that the children are going to forget. Children don't forget. You remember everything, and it starts to create a behavior pattern within you, so they're always affected. So what we try to do is help them to understand that though they have no verbiage for it, because one of the reasons why a lot of things can't get said by children is because they don't have the words, they haven't learned the language yet. So we use a lot of play therapy, things that we can relate to. We try to learn their language in therapy and in counseling to be able to get them to express the fears that they feel when they shut down, when they start to act up, because a child is not going to tell you, I'm frustrated and I don't like the fact that you're hitting each other, because they can't say that. Like literally, they can't say it, especially if they're 2 years old. They can't say that, but they can feel it and they know that something is wrong. They just don't know what to do about it. They're not big enough. You know, it's even with, victims that have been sexually assaulted when they're children and they're molested, they're not big enough. So they can't say anything and they can't really explain to you what's going on. So we try to give them a language, or at least understand the language that they have, so that we can help them to see that it's not them. They're not the ones that are causing this to happen. And in doing that, especially if it's a child that has to go back to the home because the mother may not have processed the information enough for her to leave, or the father may not have processed the information enough for him to walk away. We have to help them to find their own voice in their own way and be very mindful of what they're going through, because it doesn't change. We have a lot of people that are emotionally stagnated. They make decisions based on the fears that they had at 2 and 3 years old, at 40 and 50 years old. And silence, because you can't speak and you're told not to speak, causes you to now develop a thing within yourself where you're afraid of confrontation, you're afraid to speak. So we have a lot of people that will complain to everybody except the person that's done something to them. And so that's something that we work on with them as well.
Very important work indeed.
Thank you.
But
It's everybody's job though.
Yeah, and I love the way that you keep saying that, because that's going to resonate.
So Sheelene, you are a motivational speaker and a life coach. What would you say to a person who is currently battling stress?
5 minutes. 5 minutes. There's always 5 minutes that you can take for yourself. And in the 5 minutes, don't plan for anything or anybody else but yourself, even if that's just to sit. Breathing is a good technique. It's not always possible. When you're anxious, telling somebody to breathe causes them more anxiety, by the way, just so that you know. But if you can get yourself to a calm within yourself so that you have 5 minutes to kind of let your body regulate itself. There's a technique that I use with a lot of people, and it's worked. I use it with myself as well. If I'm starting to feel like I need to say things and it's not very professional, because I'm human, so that does happen sometimes. I pick a letter of the alphabet and I either pick all the countries, and so because I'm having to think about it, it focuses me. So it slows down my thought process. It slows down everything else. And at that point, my breathing starts to regulate itself and I'm able to see. And then when you get to the end of that, just think of one positive thing about yourself. Positive name affirmations as well are very, very helpful. And I use that a lot, especially in motivational speaking. So I'll have a group of people and everybody's taking their name because it becomes personal. And they will pick the letter from their name. And I'll use Shelly from mine. So I know that I may be sensual, I may be helpful, I may be energetic. I may be lively today, I may be loving today, and I'm definitely yearning for more information. And so if I keep saying those things about myself, it helps to remind me of who I am, because there are words that I use that are related to me, and that tends to calm you down enough for you to start seeing the other things that you can do as well.
I have no doubt that you're very effective at your job, because I listened to you talk just now. I was applying those strategies to myself, and I thought, wow, this is. I need more than 5 minutes with Shelly, guys. Unfortunately, we don't have it today. But this is so informative, Shelly, and I want to thank you again for the work that you do. Thank you for taking the time out to explain it to us, and I feel motivated, honestly. Yeah. But
awesome.
The thing that I will take away from this is that something that you said before. You said it at least twice, that it's everybody's business. Everybody needs to get involved. So just before we let you go again, I want to give you one final opportunity to underscore that point and any others that you'd like to make, Shelly.
Okay. Thank you. It is everybody's business. Something to remember, just so that we can understand why it's everybody's business. When we make it a problem only when it becomes personal, then the problem's still there, right? It's everybody's problem all the time, so it should always be personal, because we're all one traumatic event away from being mentally ill, one rage away from being a murderer, and one natural disaster from being homeless. So the people who we don't see as us can be us in a split second. And if we keep that in mind, we'll remember that everybody is a person and none of us need to be invisible.